Hey everyone, welcome to A Loop Through a Loop. I'm Tara. Today is near the end of January, and so we're going to talk about all the January making. Before we dive into FOs, I wanted to mention the hat that I'm wearing is my pattern, So This Is Love. And it's just really cold outside, so the headband wasn't going to cut it, so I popped on a hat. I don't know, can you see anything like this? I have a few of these hats. I have one in this pattern, and then I have a couple in my other hat patterns. If you're interested in taking a look at some of the patterns that I do have published, you can check out my Ravelry store. The link will be down below. And also it works out great because I have no idea what I would like to do with my hair. We're kind of in the awkward stage of me growing it back out long. And I went to trim my bangs. It was not a good trim. The hat wins until I can figure out what I would like to do with my hair. That's what I'm wearing, and let's move on into finished objects for this month. I'm checking in with you at the end of the third week of January with a couple of finished objects. First up are a pair of mittens that I made for myself. These were kind of emergency mittens because we got a snowstorm with about 8 inches of snow, and I realized I've made other people mittens, but not myself. I decided I needed to fix that fast, so I knocked these out as fast as I could. The yarn used for these mittens is a DK weight, and I can show you. I used this green, the chartreuse green, and this used to be a hat, and then I went to put the hat on this winter and it was too loose, and so I knew I wasn't going to wear it, so I frogged it, and it was perfect for these mitts. This is a non-superwash merino. And then this was just a really pretty DK weight yarn I found at Hobby Lobby. And so I used that for the color work. This is superwash. I used the Tin Can Knits World's Simplest Mittens in order to make these because I knew that was a pattern that I already had, I've already made, I know I like it. I did do the adult small just because I have little chicken wrists, and when I put on my mittens, I want to make sure that snow is not going to be getting down into my cuff. So I wanted something that has a good fit. It's not tight, it's not loose, it fits. The World's Simplest Mitten does not have any pattern design to it. It's just ribbing and stockinette. But I kind of wanted to have fun with the colors. So I used, I think, depending on where you are, it's a flea stitch or a lice stitch. Either way, we got the 8-inch snowstorm, and I used my husband's mittens that I made him. I thought, well, he's not wearing them. That's dumb. I'm going to go use them. And they worked fantastic. And those were out of Whole Super Soft. So I want to eventually make some Selbu-like mittens for myself. But then I decided, if we're getting snow now in January, we might be getting it again, so I need to knock out a pair of mittens. And then I thought, but I'm gonna leave my thumbs out because there are some places that we go that I have to text to let the front office know that we're there, or I have to call in so that they know we're there and can tell us when it's safe to come in. And I need to have my thumbs available, but I still wanna keep the rest of my hands warm. So that's why I left the thumbs out on purpose. So I'm thinking this is a great idea. I'm so glad I had the forethought to think about it. Then we got a second batch of snow, and these were all done. So I was like, great, I'll put my mittens on. I really like the fabric. It's nice and snuggly. but my poor little thumbs are so cold. So these can be my mom mittens when I have to do all the mom things and still have to get on my phone to call and text different offices whenever we get there and run around with the kids. But I think eventually I want to make myself a pair of like working mittens so that when I have to go clean off the driveway, then my poor little thumbs don't get frozen. But I love these. I don't really know what else to say. I used a 5 on the rib, and I used a 7. Is that right? A 5 and then a 7 on the main fabric, I believe. Whatever the pattern tells you to use for needle sizes, that's what I followed. I didn't swatch for these. What I did was I used the 5 and I cast on for the medium size, and I got a couple rows in and I was like, this is way too big. This is way too big. And because the green is a non-superwash, it has kind of felted up a little bit, but with them being gloves or mittens, I am okay with that because I'm thinking, well, if they, the more I use them and the more they felt up a little bit, the less likely like wind and water will get into them. And so that just makes it even better. And like I said, I like the density of the fabric. So this was like an emergency, unexpected make, and I knocked them out pretty quick. And like I said, I just kind of improvised the flea stitch or lie stitch or whatever. And since we hold them up like this, I think since the V is pointing up, we're just gonna say they're little hearts. Okay. Another project that I've had in the back of my mind for ever since fall, this past fall of 2021, I've been thinking about a baby gift, and finally I was like, okay, I've got it. But I've been trying to finish up some of my current whips, and so I was kind of torn, like, do I go ahead and cast this on? I already have other stuff that I'm working on. But then I thought to myself, the last time I did a baby knit, that blanket took me months and months and months to make. I don't want to run into the same problem where baby's already here and now baby's not getting the blanket until a couple months late after they've already been here. I went ahead and got to a place in my whips where I felt comfortable, where I could put them down and take a break from them. I've kind of reached my threshold on working on them. I tried out sandness garn. I've been wanting to try out sandness garn just because I haven't. I know that's what Petite Knit uses, so that gets popularity that way. I ordered mine from Mother Knitter, which is the sandness garn flagship store in the US in Red Bank, New Jersey. And what I did is I ordered just a collection of blues and greens, and this is what I have left over. So I have more than enough left over. Clearly baby's a boy. I have more than enough left over that I can still knit hats and socks, and I can probably do like a striped sweater if I wanted to. I go back and forth on whether or not to knit a baby garment like a sweater, because 1, they do grow so fast, 2, they spit up and there are blowouts and all of that kind of stuff. And this is the baby yarn, baby Yule. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, but it is machine washable. But what I'm thinking is just make a boatload of baby socks. I'm glad I have all of this still to play with. I decided to go with the Vertices Unite Baby Blanket pattern by Stephen West because I enjoyed the Vertices Unite shawl pattern so much. And I wanted to try something that could let me have some fun with color and didn't feel really rigid because the shape is kind of organic and abstract. So something that was really just fun and not a lot of intense thinking, because a lot of my recent projects that I've finished in 2021, I was looking at charts a lot and I couldn't just take my knitting with me and go. I had to have my pattern with me. And so I wanted something that, yes, I needed to have the pattern with me, but it was easy enough that I didn't have to feel like a slave to the pattern, if that makes sense. So I just finished this up yesterday, and since it's a super wash yarn, I did put it in we have a front load washer that has a hand wash, wool wash cycle with cold water. Here's the blanket. And I feel like sometimes it's deceiving what we see on the screen, that it seems pretty big. But then in real life, I'm like, well, this doesn't seem very big. But newborns and babies are pretty tiny. So I feel like if anything, once baby is past the newborn stage, this would be a really good, like, just good snuggle blanket. I didn't really follow I didn't follow the pattern as far as colors. Like I didn't have a color A, B, C, D, or E, which it called for. Like I said, I bought 7 different colors. And then once I finished one section, I just thought, well, what do I want to try for the next one? And so I just kind of did it one section at a time. And this is categorized as a fingering weight yarn. I used a size 6. The pattern is written for DK weight yarn on a size 7. So there I know is part of the reason why the size is smaller than probably the finished samples are. Using their yarn for the first time, it wasn't love at first sight. Like it wasn't like when I used Holst garn or the other yarns that I love. There's just something about them, like the first time I used them, I just loved them. And that wasn't necessarily the case with this yarn, but eventually I did really enjoy working with it. Is it something that I'm going to go back and repurchase a ton? I don't know. We'll just kind of see how it goes. Like I said, if anything, in my head, I have a certain color in my mind, and if they have that color, then and in the fiber that I want, then I would go with it again. And I was able to knock this out in a week. I was reading project notes from different people who have knit this, and there was somebody that complained that they were really bothered that they couldn't fold this nice and neat. If you're somebody that would be interested in knitting this pattern, do take into account that it is an abstract shape and it's not geometrically symmetrical. Does that make sense? It's not symmetrical. So of course you're not going to be able to fold it perfectly. Like the back of it's not, this isn't folded perfect, but I can make the top look nice and neat. I don't know. Now we're ready to talk about works in progress. I'm going to start off with the works in progress that I already had existing for a while. And a couple of them are more long-term projects just because of the volume of knitting involved or the intricacy of the stitches. So I'm going to just briefly go through those. I'm not going to get into too much detail. If you want to know more details that I don't mention this time, you can check out my Ravelry project page that will also be linked down below. To start off, in this basket is my half and half wrap, and not a whole lot of progress has been made on this, but what I did want to share about this project is I have made it to my second skein. I'm just telling myself, since this is a larger project with many skeins of yarn, whenever I do go to focus on this project, I just focus on, instead of 6 skeins of yarn, I just think just 1. So the next time I pick this up, my goal will be to work through 1 skein of yarn, and then I can put it down and work on something else. To me, that's more palatable and approachable. The other long-term whip that I have been working on is my bas relief wrap. It has grown quite a bit since we last got together. I finished my 3rd skein of yarn, and I have connected the 4th and final skein. So in February, my plan is to finish this up. It should be more than doable, especially with February. I'm not really a huge Valentine's person. I'm more of a Easter girl. I really love Easter. But for some reason this year, I'm just liking the idea of Valentine's Day in pink. So this will be a great little something kind of pink to work on. In January, I was able to get through one skein in each of these projects. So February, I will work on working through the next skein. That's kind of just a really quick run through. At least I hope it was quick. You know, when you get to talking, you're never really sure how quick something was. Then on to my Blue Christmas. This has kind of been ongoing. I have finished and blocked the body. I love the way that this feels. I wish that it was already done because this would have been perfect to be wearing for today. My goal in January was to finish the body. And really in January, I probably could have just finished the whole thing, but reality told me, just break it up. Like, I'm not here for any trophies. There's no contest. Just finish the body for this month. But do you see how it moves? Part of what helps with the drape of this is that there's silk. I'm holding 3 strands of yarn together, a non-superwash merino wool, a silk mohair, and then also a lace weight wool that has silk in it. So there's 2 strands of silk that kind of just, I can't wait to wear this. So February, my job is to get the sleeves done, and I should be able to knock that out in a week, if I'm being honest. If I just sit down. For me, the picking up the stitches for the sleeves, it's not that it's hard, it's just not my favorite part, but I know that once I pick up and start knitting and go and get that first sleeve done, that second sleeve practically knits itself because I have everything marked and I don't have to try it on as often. And then this baby's ready to be worn. This is also a pattern that is my own design. The original design was knit in stripes, and one of my test knitters knit it in a solid, and since I saw hers, I can't get that out of my mind, and I just knew I wanted it in a solid, and I've been really attracted to blue lately. I had all this yarn in my stash already, and so I decided to combine the 3 yarns into one project, and so far I'm loving it, and I'll keep you posted on how that turns out in the end, but I think it's going to be fantastic. Next up, I have a couple of whips that are new cast-ons since we last spoke. If you didn't catch last month's episode, I finished my gingerbread dream socks designed by Deborah Raymond of Candy Shop Yarns. I love those socks, but truth be told, I've only worn them once or twice since then because now that Christmas is over, Christmas is over, so I don't really want to wear gingerbread socks, even though I love them. So I'm gonna put those away, and those will be like my festive holiday socks. But since then, I thought, okay, I want to start making some other socks. Like, my feet are cold, I wear socks all the time, I want to try hand knitted socks. And so I had some yarn laying around. This is the ball that I'm currently working from, and I'm making a pair of Andrea Mowry's everyday socks. I have one sock completely done. I realized that this looks really silly because it's not been blocked. I've literally been storing the finished sock in a little bag so that it wouldn't get messed up in all the other stuff that's in the bag. This is a toe up. I knit mine on US ones, and so instead of the stitches recommended in the pattern for my size, I did 64 stitches, and I have tried it on. It fits really nicely. I like the snug fit. It's a Turkish cast on at the toe, a Flegel heel. I have all my stitch markers indicating how many rows I need to do. And really it kind of worked out to where if I fold the sock in half, it folds up nice and neatly. And because I had leftover yarn from my gingerbread socks, I kind of wanted to use some of it up. So I used some of the pink on the toe, and then at the cuff, I've done kind of like a little athletic, athleisure look, if you will. And then I did a tubular bind off at the top. And so far, I really like them. To make sure that my stripes stay clean, the first row of every color change, I just knit the entire row. Then I would go back to my 2x2 ribbing for 2 rows. I then would go to my next color switch, do 1 row of knitting, and then go back to the 2x2 rib. That way, like I said, my lines, like when I stretch them out, the lines stay clean. And then I did about 1 inch of the main color at the top. It kind of blends in. There's not as big of a contrast as I ideally would like, but like I said, I want to use up the scraps that I have. I thought the colors coordinate well enough that we'll go with it. And you can see this small piece of pink yarn right here is just enough for 3 rounds on that sock. And then I will have 0 leftovers of that pink. And that feels incredible. I did it. I used up all of my yarn. This is the contrasting yarn I'm saving up for sock 2. And here I am on sock 2. I have a couple more. I use my stitch markers. If I get this cable out of the way, I link my stitch markers so then I can keep track of how much farther I need to go. I'm almost ready to start the cuff, the stripes at the cuff, and then I'll be done. And I don't plan on blocking these. I plan on putting them straight onto my feet and seeing how they wear. This is kind of going to kick off my sock experiment for myself. This yarn, unfortunately, is just 100% superwash merino, so there's no nylon in it. So I'm hoping that since I knit it on a size 1, that the fabric will be dense enough that they'll wear okay. I don't have my hopes super high for them, but we'll just kind of see how it goes. I have some other different types of socks that I want to try out. So I do have some superwash merino wool that I ordered from Mother Knitter. And this is Sandnes Garn Sisu. It is their sock weight yarn. So that is a nylon merino mix. So that'll kind of give me I don't know, is that the standard for comparison, a sock that has nylon in it? And then I have this skein of superwash merino, but there's no nylon in this, but I ordered some mohair from Sandnes Garn to try out. And so I think I'm gonna make a pair of socks with this, some DK socks with this yarn and the mohair held together. At least that's the plan right now. But it's been so cold lately, I'm thinking, do I want the socks or do I want a warm hat? I think right now I'm gonna go with socks. It doesn't stay that cold here that long. Really, the mohair socks would be really good as bed socks. I don't know. Right now my plan is the rest of the socks are just gonna be shorties because that's what I typically wear. We'll see how far I can make the yarn stretch. There's still a part of me that doesn't want a huge skein of yarn left over from making shorty socks. Like I just want to make really good use of the yarn that I have. And I know right now about myself is I admire scrappy projects and I would aspire to make the beautiful scrappy projects that I see others making, but I'm just not there. Like I look at my scraps and I don't see a vision for them and I can only wabi-sabi so much. That's what's going on with my socks in my favorite sock bag. My newest cast on that I just got on the needles this week is kind of I call these kind of projects like a Franken project, like Frankenstein, because I'm taking an existing pattern and then I'm doing whatever I want with it, because I found that I was getting almost to the point of frustration or feeling disheartened when I came to pick up my knitting, because I loved what I'm working on and I want the objects and I will continue to work on them. But as far as my kind of creative outlet, I wasn't being fulfilled because I was doing what everyone else's pattern said to do instead of doing something that I wanted to. So I hope that made sense. So what I did is I took my beloved Rowan alpaca. As you can see, it's not here anymore. It's missing because what I have decided to do is right now is not the time for me to cast on Pink Fizz. Something within the last week or so got me thinking, if I love this yarn, it feels precious to me. Not precious enough that I don't use it, but precious enough to not just make anything with it. Do you know what I'm saying? I went back online and I kept looking at pictures of Pink Fizz, and I still think it's beautiful and I still really like it, and eventually one day I will probably make it, but I just couldn't get started on it. I mean, how long can I go on saying how much I love this yarn and love a pattern and then not cast it on? It just doesn't make sense, which here recently told me what I needed to do was shift what I was going to do. What I have decided to do is to take the Jenny pattern designed by Andrea Mowry, which I've had and has been in my queue for a while, and I'm going to take that pattern as kind of a construction recipe to scaffold my decision making when it comes to knitting up a cardigan. So I want the cardigan basically to have the same style and fit as the Jenny, but I needed the stitch pattern to kind of reflect more of what feels authentic to myself. So what I did is I used my handy dandy Japanese Stitch Bible, favorite book, hands down, just my favorite book. I chose a motif. I went through here and kept looking and kept looking and kept looking. And there was another motif I thought I might do, but then I kept going back to this one and I thought, it feels like it looks really difficult, but that's the one that it has to be. So it's this pink one right here is the motif I chose. And I chose it because it reminded me of a bouquet of flowers with some little buds on it. And it just kind of made me think either like a Victorian era bouquet of flowers or like wildflowers. There was just something about it where in my gut, I was like, that's the one, that's it. So what I did is I took my phone and I took a picture of the chart, and I have an app on my phone that allows me to turn that picture into a PDF. So the app I think is literally called PDF Scanner. And I have a Samsung Galaxy, so I have an Android. If any of you have an Android phone and you use Google Play for your store, you can look up PDF Scanner, and all you have to do is you take a picture of the document or whatever it is, and then you can turn it into a PDF. And then I printed it off. So I took that little bitty chart and now it's full size on a piece of paper. It's easy for me to look at and keep track of and not get so confused. So Andrea Mowry's cardigan for Jenny, the design is top down, but with this motif, I want that motif on my sleeves. So I need it to be worked bottom up. So I'm using the construction of Jenny as kind of like my baseline. And would you call it reverse engineering if I'm doing it the other way? I'm kind of using those measurements. I don't know. My goal right now is to go slow enough and think about what I'm doing before I do it and take frequent breaks to check my work, because I have a tendency to get zoned in and just go, go, go. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm working on the first sleeve. What I've done is I started at the cuff. So I want to show you my stitch markers. So the orange are my stitch markers to measure the cuff. The green stitch markers are telling me all of my increases. And then my red stitch markers are telling me how many inches or rows I'm knitting straight without increasing. The cuff is 6 inches long and it'll be folded in half. And then that allows for this panel to be shown off. I still have probably about 4 more inches of knitting on this sleeve, and then I'll start sleeve 2. And like I said, this is a slow project. I'm just taking my time with it, and we'll see how it turns out. The cuff is knit on a US 4 needle, and the body of the sleeve and the motif are knit on a US 6. And I will say my small circular needles have been super helpful because I don't have to sacrifice or remember where I am in the design because it is one continuous round instead of splitting things. There are a couple spots in here that I had to pull out some extra tools that I only use every once in a while. To do the bobbles, I pulled out a crochet hook. This is a size F or a 3.75 millimeter crochet hook. So this is what I use to make the bobbles. And then there is a little section where you wrap stitches. So you need to use a cable needle in order to pull those stitches off the needle, wrap them up, and then put them back on. So this is the cable needle that I'm using for that. I like the hook, so then I can put the stitches on. I hold the hook like this, wrap my yarn around, and then I can put them back onto my right needle. So that's everything for January, all of the knitting. Like I said, I've taken some of my larger projects and broken them into more palatable and attainable goals. So for my sweater that I'm working on here, my goal for February might just be finish both sleeves because that seems doable. And I also have the half wrap and the bias wrap or bas relief wrap and some socks that I also want to make. So I just take the big projects and break them down into really small, manageable things. And then I leave myself room to do what I want to do. If I finish those 2 sleeves, but the desire in my heart is to keep going and cast on the body, then that's okay too, because that's okay. Thanks for coming to hang out with me. I really appreciate you being here, and I'll see you in February. So that'll be here before we know it, I'm sure. So I'll see you next time. Bye.